Church History. Light amid the darkness as seen in the life of Luther. London, G. Morrish, 20, Paternoster Square, before 1915. Republished by Irving Risch. Host of Down to Earth but Heavenly Minded podcast. Chapter 9. Luther in conflict with Rome, AD 1518. After Luther's return from Heidelberg, he thought well to revise his original theses to make them clearer, and to modify some. These new theses he called his solutions. In some parts he was very bold. Thus he spoke of the Pope: I care little what pleases or displeases the Pope. He is a man like other men. True words, but they must have sounded strange indeed to those who held the Pope to be infallible. He spoke of Christ thus: it is impossible for a man to be a Christian without having Christ, and if he has Christ, he has, at the same time, all that is in Christ. True words. But they must have surprised those who held that no one could be saved without the absolution of the priest. When Luther had completed his solutions, he sent a copy of them to the Pope, with a letter stating what had stirred him up to action. But while Luther had been thus engaged, Rome had been preparing silently to attack him. A message was sent to the Elector Frederick requesting him to cease to protect Luther, at the same time alluding to the fidelity of the Elector to the Church. A diet was then being held by the Emperor, see note. Maximilian at Augsburg, to which all the German states sent their representatives. The Emperor wished his grandson Charles, who was already King of Spain and Naples, to be proclaimed King of the Romans, and to be his successor as Emperor. Most of the electors had agreed to the wish of the Emperor, but Frederick thought it wrong and would not yield. This offended the Emperor, who then, to gain over the Pope, who was also opposed to his scheme, wrote to him against Luther, promising to carry out anything the Pope might order to be done in the matter. Note. Germany was governed at that time by 1. An emperor chosen by the electors. 2. Ecclesiastical electors. 1. Archbishop of Mentz. 2. Archbishop of Treves. 3. Archbishop of Cologne. All these were arch-chancellors. 3. Secular electors. 1. King of Bohemia, Arch-Caberer. 2. Elector of Bavaria, Arch-Carver. 3. Elector of Saxony, Arch-Marshal. 4. Elector of Brandenburg, Arch-Chamberlain. 5. Elector Palatine of the Rhine, Arch-Treasurer. 4. The princes of the empire, divided into spiritual and temporal. They each had a vote in the Diet. 5. The prelates, abbots, and abbesses, the counts and nobles, each had a vote. 6. The free imperial cities each had a vote. Each state was governed by its own sovereign, he being elector, duke, prince or bishop as the case might be. The diets had the levying of taxes, enacting laws, declaring war, concluding peace. The emperor could refuse his ratification, but could not modify the decisions of the diet. On August 6, 1806, the Emperor Francis II abdicated the imperial crown of Germany, and declared the dissolution of the Germanic Empire. End of note. The elector also wrote to the Pope, telling him that Luther was ready to defend himself before learned men, and to submit to their decision. Luther was quietly going on with his duties at Wittenberg, waiting to hear the result of his letter to the Pope, when on August 7 he received an order to proceed to Rome. Luther had looked for a blessing, but he was to be devoured, while Tetzel escaped. How could it be otherwise when the friends of the Pope had set Tetzel to work? All Wittenberg was in consternation. If Luther went to Rome, it was clear he would never leave it alive, and if he refused to go, he was denying the authority of the Pope, which all then held to be supreme. On the next day Luther wrote to Spalatin, see note, asking him to use his influence with the elector to have his hearing fixed for some place in Germany instead of going to Rome. The University of Wittenberg also wrote to the Pope, begging the same favor. Note, George Spalatin, a man of wisdom and candor, was chosen by Frederick as his private secretary and chaplain, and teacher of his nephew John Frederick. Because of his excellent spirit he was made a confidant by the elector. He was gained over to the truth, and became a staunch friend of Luther. End of note. Now the Pope had been pleased with the electors refusing to sanction the scheme of the emperor as to his grandson. And therefore he could well afford to please the elector by letting Luther's case be tried in Germany instead of Rome. Thus we see how political and worldly matters were interwoven with matters touching the question whether Luther should continue to preach the truth or not, but God was overruling all. On the 23rd of August the Pope signed the order for Luther to be heard in Germany before his legate. In this order Luther, unless he recanted, was to be seized and carried to Rome. But Luther did not know this until afterwards. Just at this time there came to Wittenberg a thin young man to be a professor at the university. All were disappointed at his appearance, but his eloquence and his learning soon won him many friends, and among them none formed so lasting a friendship with him as Luther. This young man was Philip Melanchthon. See note. Melanchthon's name was really Philip Schwarzerd, and D'Aubigne tells us that Reuchlin was so taken with Philip when a lad that he changed his name from Schwarzerd to Melanchthon. Both words signify black earth, the one in German, the other in Greek. Most of the learned men of those times translated the names into Greek or Latin. End of note. The two men were in some things the very opposite. An historian has compared Luther to the positive, and Melanchthon to the negative agents in electricity. Luther was energetic and headstrong at times, Melanchthon was timid and gentle. They helped each other amazingly. Luther spurred on Melanchthon, Melanchthon restrained Luther. Melanchthon was the very man Luther needed for other work. He was a much better Greek scholar than Luther, and Luther had been engaged in translating the New Testament into German, and now he had a companion who could give him very valuable assistance. With Melanchthon's help the work proceeded. But this sweet and blessed labor was soon to be interrupted. A summons arrived for Luther to appear at Augsburg, see note, and answer for himself. His friends were greatly alarmed. One and another wrote to him begging him not to venture on the journey. And Count Albert of Mansfeld sent a message for him not to go, because certain nobles had bound themselves by an oath to waylay and murder him. Note. Augsburg is situated in a beautiful plain near the confluence of the Lech and the Wurlach. It is now incorporated with the Kingdom of Bavaria. End of note. Luther could not be moved. He said, "They have already torn to pieces my honor and my good name. All I have left is my wretched body. Let them have it, they will but shorten my life by a few hours." Confiding in God, he set out on foot. From Wittenberg he went to Weimar, thence to Nuremberg. From here Link, preacher of Nuremberg, and Leonard an Augustan monk, determined to accompany Luther to Augsburg. To whom shall we turn, O Lord, but to thyself on high? Men threaten thy work to mar, to thee for help we fly. A present God thou wilt be, each step along the way, in every storm that can come a shelter and a stay. O give us strong faith to live in faithfulness to thee, to lean on thy strength, O Lord, and conquerors we shall be.